Starting off this countdown in no particular order, we've got Jon Hamm. Jon Hamm is most notably famous for his role in the hit television series Mad Men as a cutthroat advertising executive. What he may not want you to know about him, however, were his less than savory college days that landed him in some serious trouble. In 1990, Jon was arrested for his alleged role in a fraternity hazing that turned horribly violent. His fraternity house was even dissolved after Hamm and his friends harmed a pledge so violently that he was in the hospital, even going as far as to light him on fire. Jon was charged with a misdemeanor offense, and when he was asked about it in 2018, his response wasn't the best. Quote, "I was essentially acquitted. I wasn't convicted of anything. I was caught up in a big situation, a stupid kid in a stupid situation, and it was a bummer. I moved on from it." Okay, now we're moving on, I guess. And at number 9 is Richard Pryor, the iconic comedian who is often cited as direct inspiration for other comedy legends like Eddie Murphy and Dave Chappelle. Pryor changed the game. But what you may not know is that there was an extremely dark past behind the All Smiles comic. Richard grew up in an extremely unstable childhood, raised by a substance-using mother in a brothel in Illinois. Richard saw things that no child should ever have to see, and to cope with such a horrifying childhood, he also turned to substance use to self-medicate. Richard was married 7 times to 5 different women who had trouble with the comic's insatiable personal life. He even almost passed away at his own hand when he doused himself in rum and lit himself on fire while using substances. Pryor's friend even stated in an interview, quote, "He has about 13 personalities, and while you could deal with 9 of them, the other 4 are a nightmare." At number 8 is Billy Tipton. Billy Tipton, if you haven't heard of him, was a revered jazz musician who rose to fame in the 1940s and 1950s. He lived his life in relative normalcy outside of his celebrity status. Although he was never married, he did have 5 serious girlfriends, all of whom referred to themselves as Miss Tipton. Eventually, he settled down with a woman named Kelly, and they adopted 3 sons together. It wasn't until his death from a stomach ulcer in 1989 that, as he was being rushed to the hospital, his giant secret was uncovered. Billy Tipton was born a woman and had concealed his sex throughout his entire life, even from his relationships. The revelation came as, quote, "a shock to nearly everyone, including the women who had considered themselves his wives, as well as his sons and the musicians who traveled with him." To explain away any intimacy that would have happened between his partners, Billy reportedly said that he was in a serious car accident that mutilated his body, leaving him unable to perform. At the time this was revealed, it sent shockwaves through the music scene where trans performers were basically completely unheard of. And at number 7 is Prince. The iconic pop singer is considered one of the greatest musicians to have ever lived, but he also had a secret that was only uncovered upon his tragic and sudden death in 2016. After he passed, many stories started to come to light as both bank statements became public and from various sources. These bank statements revealed that Prince had been secretly donating insane sums of money to various charities throughout his life, each with the condition that the donation be private and that the donor be kept a secret. A few organizations that he did support in the days before his death were the Harlem Children's Zone and Uptown Dance Academy, New York. He even donated $12,000 to the Louisville Free Public Library in order to keep it from closing, all under the condition that they keep his name unlisted from donor records. He reportedly gave thousands away at a time, particularly to charities related to children, as his own child tragically passed away after only 6 days of life. He also focused on environmental issues, and uniquely, unlike a lot of celebrities who choose to invest so they get a financial return, Prince just donated to foundations that support environmental causes and a transition to solar power. Number 6, Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page is the virtuoso guitarist and founder of Led Zeppelin. Jimmy is largely known as one of the greatest guitarists in the history of rock music. I mean, he set the standard for the many who have imitated his electric style. Yet, what he may not want you to know about him is his predatory relationship with a young girl who was only 14 at the time. While he toured with Led Zeppelin, Jimmy dated Lori Maddox, although they kept their relationship extremely private and basically hidden because it was, you know, illegal and creepy. Even in the loose 70s, this relationship could have put Page in jail. They dated for a little while, and who knows what they did behind the scenes, but Jimmy eventually dumped her for BB Bell, who was of age at the time, thank God. Either way, not a fan of this one. In at number 5 is Matthew Broderick. Matthew Broderick is known largely for his titular role as Ferris Bueller in the John Hughes coming-of-age film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was also in The Producers and a bunch of other A-list movies. What you may not know about him, however, is that he was directly involved and in fact caused the death of numerous people. He and Jennifer Grey, the star of Dirty Dancing, were on a romantic vacation in Ireland when Matthew head-on hit the car of a 28-year-old woman and her mother. Both women were pronounced dead at the hospital. The road was straight, and easy to navigate. The issue was that they were in Ireland, and he, out of habit, drove on the wrong side of the road, which led to the crash. Following the accident, Broderick was convicted of careless driving but was only fined $175, which to this day the family of the victims called a quote travesty of justice. At number 4 is Jackie Chan. While Jackie Chan appeared as a comedic kung fu fighting man on the screen, his personal life is absolutely insane and surprisingly not well known. In fact, Jackie himself didn't know until well into his career just how many secrets were being kept in his family. He learned in 2003 that he had 2 secret brothers living in China and that his father was a nationalist spy on secret missions to bust substance crime in mainland China. In fact, that's where he met Jackie's mother. In what seems like a moment straight out of a noir crime boss movie, Jackie's father met his mother, Lily Chan, because he was sent to bust her as an infamous dealer and legendary gambler in Shanghai. So, his mother was one of the lords of the Chinese underbelly, and his father was sent to arrest her. The two fled to Australia together, where they lived until their death. Jackie's father also revealed that the actor's real family name isn't Chan at all, but rather Fang. How's that for a family reunion? In at number 3 is Rose McGowan. Rose was one of the founding spokespersons in the Me Too movement, joining dozens of women who brought Harvey Weinstein to justice. She is best known for her 90s movies like Jawbreaker, Scream, and Encino Man. But what you may not know about her is her rather horrifying upbringing. She was born in Florence, Italy, where her parents lived in a commune called the Children of God. Basically, she was born into a cult that had mass allegations of horrifying crimes against humanity. I can't really say what they are because of YouTube restrictions, but if you're curious, I suggest you look into it with a serious content warning in mind. The cult in question lured people in with promises of all kinds of physical intimacy and activities with extremely young women set to perform such acts on the men in the cult. Luckily for Rose, she was largely protected from the more heinous side of the cult, and she and her family fled when she was 14 years old, where quote, "We hid in an old stone house and had to boil pots of water to take baths. The cult sent people to find us. I remember a man trying to break in with a hammer." Number 2 on the list, Rihanna. While the celebrity singer is in the news lately for her exciting pregnancy with A$AP Rocky, what you may not know about her is her rather insane early life, and the secrets that they kept even from her until they were finally brought to light. Old family photos were unearthed that reveal a secret side of the family that Rihanna herself rarely ever talks about: her father's other kids. Rihanna has 3 older siblings through her father by 3 different women, as he admitted to being quite the womanizer in his heyday. Her and her father have an extremely complicated relationship, as he has dealt with substance use issues for most of his life. And now to find out that she had 3 other siblings she knew nothing about, it's a wonder the two have stuck together through so much. And in at number 1 is Mark Wahlberg. The actor and singer needs no introduction, but he may need a little disclaimer beside his name for the rather horrifying incident he caused in the 80s. When he was 16 years old, Mark had an extremely harsh life, and he ended up brutally harming an elderly Vietnamese man in a racially motivated attack. He shouted slurs at him while physically harming him so badly that Mark was charged with attempted murder. While he was sentenced to 2 years in prison, for some reason he only served 45 days. In a beautiful show of faith, his victim, whose name is Johnny Trin, stated that he forgives Mark. Quote, "Everyone deserves another chance. He was young and reckless, but I forgive him now. He paid for his crime when he went to prison." Mark got a pardon from the court, basically exonerating him from his crime, an action that he later stated he regrets. Quote, "I didn't need that. I spent 28 years righting the wrong. I was relieved to find out that the injuries to his eye had occurred in the early 70s and not from the incident that happened that night, but I was able to meet with him and his wife and his daughter and apologize for these horrific acts. Some good can come out of it." First up on our list today is Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando is considered to be one of the most handsome Hollywood stars to grace the silver screen. He is also known for being an extremely talented actor who led a bit of a rough and tumble life. But what you may not know is that his ladies' man attitude resulted in various affairs and marriages, and well, 8 kids, with the actor adopting 3 additional kids on top of that. And sadly, some of these children would have extremely unhappy lives. In 1990, one of Marlon Brando's sons, Christian, shot his sister Sheehan's boyfriend. Apparently, he had suspected that Sheehan's boyfriend was harming her physically, and so Christian ended up taking his life when the altercation escalated. He was charged with manslaughter and served 6 years in prison. Sadly, that wasn't the only horror that the Brando children would go through, as only 5 years later, Sheehan tragically ended up taking her own life after a diagnosis with schizophrenia and a steady mental decline. Next on the list is Liv Tyler. We all know her as the stunning half-elf woman in Lord of the Rings. She's also known as the daughter of Steven Tyler, the eccentric frontman of Aerosmith. However, that wasn't always the case. Liv Tyler was originally born as Liv Rundgren, and she believed that the famous musician and music producer Todd Rundgren was her father. However, a chance encounter as an 8-year-old with Steven Tyler started to unravel Liv's true parentage. During the meeting, Steven pointed out the eerie similarities between his own daughter and Liv, which led to her mother finally confessing the secret. Liv wasn't related to Todd at all, and in fact, her mother had kept the secret to protect her daughter because Steven was going through some serious substance issues at the time of their brief relationship. Liv eventually changed her last name to Tyler, but kept Rundgren as her middle name in homage to the man who raised her as his own at some point. Damn, I wish I had 2 rock star dads. Next up is MMA legend Ronda Rousey. She's got a spectacular record, and it's impossible to penetrate her amazing fighting legacy as she has cemented herself as one of the greats. Her personal life though, well, a little touchier. In fact, Ronda has a history of aggression in her past relationships, having violently harmed an ex-boyfriend. She is also a conspiracy theorist who has some extremely harmful opinions. She shared on her Twitter that she believes that the horrifying Sandy Hook incident was actually a manufactured incident and that the people and children involved were actually actors. I can't think of anything more harmful and disgusting than promoting that the real-life harm of was done to take away guns from Americans. Ronda shared the video and described it as, quote, extremely interesting and a must-watch documentary. Eventually, after obvious backlash, Ronda deleted the video and her manager attempted to scrub any trace of it from the internet, which obviously didn't happen because it is in fact the internet. Next up is Frank Sinatra. The smooth-singing romantic who charmed his audiences into the Hall of Greats has a seriously dark secret personal life. In fact, every move Frank Sinatra made was meticulously tracked by the FBI for 40 years in pages and pages of files. Why, you may ask? Well, outside of being held in suspicion for dodging the draft because of a supposed ear infection, he is also thought to have strong mafia ties. He's been seen in cahoots with a revolving cast of characters connected to the criminal underworld, including Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana, with whom he was close friends. Apparently, the FBI was so closely tracking Sinatra because he had introduced Sam to John F. Kennedy's campaign for presidency in an attempt to deliver Union votes. Dodging the draft and electing John F. Kennedy, Sinatra is a man after my own heart. Next up is the actor who portrayed Spider-Man in the original Spider-Man movies, you know, the ones with the PlayStation font. Well, Tobey Maguire has had an insane childhood that was largely hidden from the public when he became an A-lister. He came from a very financially strained family. His parents adopted several of his cousins after his aunt passed away suddenly, and the weight of now caring for all these kids left them destitute and broke. In a desperate attempt to provide for all these children, Toby's dad attempted to rob a bank. His attempt was unsuccessful, and his father had to spend some time in prison for his crime. Thankfully though, he was released after a few years because it was his first time offending, and the judge sympathized with his cause. Luckily for them, they made it out of the ordeal, and now Toby is an internationally recognized celebrity. Next on the list is Kevin Spacey, and not for what you might think, because really nothing can keep what he did a secret, and his attempts at hiding it are abysmal at best. But what you may not know is that there are more than a few skeletons in his closet, and he's got one secret that I actually didn't know. Kevin's left-leaning political views are very well known, so it may come as a surprise that his father was vehemently racist and believed that white people were a superior race. Kevin refuses to talk about his father, but his siblings have opened up a handful of times about their traumatic childhood, often describing their father as an evil monster. Apparently, their father would also continually his kids while they were growing up, and it got so bad that Kevin's brother Randy almost took the life of his father while the young boy was hiding in a closet, but he never opened the door. Although Kevin is a reprehensible human being, no boy deserves to grow up in such a horrifying environment. Next up is a K-pop idol whose secret is definitely out of the bag at this point. We all know just how strict and borderline harmful the K-pop industry is towards its stars, often restricting diets to near starvation in an attempt to get their already lean singers to lose weight, alongside 12 to 20 hours a day of dance practice. But one K-pop idol from the band Bang Bang has some dark underground secrets that only recently came to light. Seungri was sentenced last year to 3 years in prison for the crime of running an underground nightclub that bet heavily on foreign casinos where gambling is illegal. He was also charged with providing women to business executives for, services. Apparently, he's been doing this for years, and we only recently found out during a Korean military bust. Now it seems like sadly his K-pop days are over as he spends the next 3 years behind bars. Next up is Hollywood actor Casey Affleck. I'm surprised we haven't done this one yet, honestly. Known for movies like Manchester by the Sea and Gone Baby Gone, Affleck is a critic's best friend. But he's not everyone's best friend. In fact, Casey has been accused by multiple women of committing horrifying acts against them. Some say that he snuck into their bedrooms, others that when they refused his advances, he sent them violent and aggressive texts. Other women have said that he ordered a crew member to expose himself to this one woman. All of these allegations were attempted to be taken to court to be filed as multi-million-dollar lawsuits, but they were both settled for unknown amounts. Thanks to these settlements, we may never know if these accusations are true or not, but it seems really odd that not many people are talking about it these days. In fact, when asked about it, Casey brushes it off as hearsay and his dark past seems to be fading into secrecy once again. Second to first on our list is Oprah Winfrey. The talk show host who revolutionized the game, Oprah's name is synonymous with the monolithic empire she's built surrounding her image. She's known for her lovable, relatable, and welcoming personality. But her humble beginnings make her rise to fame all the more deserved. In fact, Oprah was born in Mississippi to a single teenager mom, and she grew up in extreme poverty. During her childhood, the cost of raising a baby became too much for the young mother, so she sent Oprah to go live with her father, or at least one of the men who she thinks might have been her father. During her time with her dad, Oprah's mom gave birth to 2 more babies, one of which was given up for adoption. The real kicker here is that Oprah only found out about her sister Patricia in 2010. While a gut reaction to this news may be to cast harsh judgment on Oprah's mother, it is important to remember that it is impossible to know what it is like unless you have been in her position. For those who have been, we think you understand the brevity of her decision. Last up is Nicolas Cage. Now, I guess it's not exactly a dark secret here, and I am maybe cheating a little bit, but I only just found this out when I was writing the script, and wow, wild. Anyways, Nicolas Cage is known for his fun and sometimes extremely cheesy acting in movies like Face Off and Ghost Rider. But what you may not know is that Nicolas Cage isn't even his real name. In fact, Cage's birth name is Nicholas Kim Coppola, and his uncle is the famed director Francis Ford Coppola. The name change resulted from his wish not to cash in on the fame associated with the Coppola name in Hollywood, though the actor did end up appearing in several of Francis's films. It is quite believable when thinking about it for a few seconds, as both talents are just as eccentric as the other. The principal difference is that Francis Ford Coppola's odd ideals gave the world masterpieces like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, while Cage gifts audiences with wild overacting and melodrama. Coming in at number 10, she's not the best actor. Madonna has completely dominated the music industry, but sadly that doesn't always translate to the silver screen. She's been in 19 films throughout the course of her career, but not all of them were shiners. Starring in the 1996 film adaptation of the musical Evita earned the singer a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy. But on the flip side, she's also won 9 Razzies. Razzies are the infamous antithesis of the Oscars for worst performances, and she won the dubious honor of Worst Actress of the Century in 2000. Rough play if you ask me. She's also turned down some pretty famous roles, including as one of the leading girls in Showgirls. While she's likely best known for acting and singing, she's also directed 2 feature films. One was in 2007 called Filth and Wisdom, the other in 2011 called W.E. Neither of these movies received the warmest of receptions from critics or audiences, and it was pretty universally panned as far as movies go. And at number 9, she suffers from brontophobia. Madonna reportedly has a massive phobia called brontophobia. Brontophobia is a fear of thunder and lightning. When she sees a storm coming, reportedly she closes all the blinds on windows and puts on giant headphones to drown out the sound of the thunder. At the end of the day, despite being one of the biggest pop stars the world has ever known, she's still very much human, with her own flaws and fears like the rest of us. Next up on the list is she dated John F. Kennedy Jr. While we all know of Madonna's infamous relationship over the years to people like Sean Penn, Vanilla Ice, Dennis Rodman, Lenny Kravitz, and Tupac, Madonna also dated the former president's son. Her disastrous marriage to Sean Penn is well recorded, and it's an open secret that it blew up due to accusations of infidelity, general chaos, and physical harm towards one another. Sean became known for his unpredictable outbursts and temper tantrums with a major jealous streak. He would often fly off the rails when he saw another man getting close to Madonna. That being said, following her messy divorce from Sean Penn, Madonna briefly dated John F. Kennedy Jr. for 6 months. In a memoir penned about the president's son that spends a bit of time delving into his romantic past, he's been linked to other celebrities like Darlie Hannah and Sarah Jessica Parker. But one of the least documented relationships he's been in was surprisingly with Madonna. Madonna was far from a big hit with the Kennedy family, with the pop star heavily leaning into the Marilyn Monroe imagery — can't imagine Jackie Kennedy being a big fan of that one — and the general disapproval of her religious iconography for fashion purposes. But the brief relationship absolutely did not last long, mostly because despite Madonna's recent past with Sean Penn, she actually found Kennedy to be much more frightening. Quote, whereas Sean would act out, perhaps give a photographer a body shot just to vent, somehow John's way seemed more personal. Madonna said that he would get up in her face, maybe an inch away, and scream at her at the top of his lungs when they were in a fight. I'm glad she left when she did. And at number 7, a bug was named after her. Listen, I know this one's out there and it's really not even a secret or something you try to hide. I just thought it was fun, so I'm putting it in. I wish the video was titled Top 10 Madonna Facts because this lady is interesting, alright? Sue me. But anyways, in 2006, scientists named a species of microscopic water-dwelling organisms, which is most commonly known as the water bear, after Madonna. The water bear's scientific name is, and bear with me, get it? Echinyscus madonnae. Don't quote me on that. It's also called a tardigrade, which is much easier. Although I'm sure it's because the researchers just loved Madonna's music, naming a bug after her is quite fitting, and I'd be proud to share a name with the water bear because it's basically invincible. Living for upwards of 120 years without food or water while withstanding harsh environmental conditions, these bugs are absolute tanks. For someone as resilient as Madonna, I'm sure she has some pride for her little bug, as both of them have managed to remain strong and consistent throughout their lives. Although it is weird that a water bug born on the same day as Madonna will outlive her by quite a few decades. Coming in at number 6, she kissed Drake at Coachella and it was so awkward. Okay, this one definitely isn't a secret considering how extensive the media coverage was, but I'm struggling here, so give me a break. At Coachella in 2015, Madonna appeared during a Drake performance where she danced around him while he was sitting in a chair. Then she went right up to him and basically stuck her tongue down his throat on stage for all to see. The shocked look on Drake's face afterwards definitely wasn't pleasant, and the non-consensuality of it all was definitely an extremely hot topic. Coming in at number 5, Madonna reminded Beyonce and Jay-Z that she is the master. Again, also not a secret because people ran with it, but Madonna has posted a Photoshop picture of Jay-Z and Beyonce gazing at photos of Madonna's album. She captioned it, quote, learning from the master. People were pissed that a white woman used the term master to show her superiority over two black individuals. In response, Madonna didn't delete the post, but she did edit the word master out of it so it just said learning instead. I guess that works too. Coming in at number 4, she didn't actually move to New York City with only $35. Okay, so this one may be a bit disputed, but there may not be tons of truth to the infamous up-and-coming Madonna story. The legend is that Madonna left her small rural town where she lived with her 5 other siblings and traveled to one of the most expensive cities in the world, New York. Apparently, she also only had $35 in her pocket and used that money to claw her way up to fame. It is a true rags to riches story about using pure willpower and drive to become one of the greatest stars of all time. But it may not even be true. In fact, Madonna's own brother disputes this story. He stated that, in fact, she had a few $100s in her pocket given to her by family to help her start out, and she had some connections and contracts underway to immediately start as a backup dancer once she landed in the city. While it's still an extremely impressive feat to go from pure normalcy with little money to just how big Madonna is, the story of her only having $35 may be a case of broken telephone, and people deliberately stretching the truth to make it seem even more impossible than it already was. Coming in at number 3, Madonna doesn't like being a material girl. One little known fact about Madonna is that she has remarked that she regrets ever recording the track that would become her moniker, Material Girl. It is one of her most famous songs and became the nickname that she is most often represented by. Similarly, she also doesn't feel like she wants to be associated with a song like a virgin either. Quote, "I like them both because they were iconic and provocative at the time, but also they're so unlike me. I am not a materialistic person, and I certainly wasn't a virgin. And by the way, how can you be like a virgin? I like the play on words. I thought they were clever. They're so geeky, they're cool." She also said that she never expected Material Girl to become as big of a hit as it was. Quote, "I've never been a good judge of what things are going to be huge or not. I'm resourceful, and if I ended up in a log cabin in the middle of the forest, that would work too. These things are not mandatory for my happiness. That's what I meant by I'm not a materialistic person." Coming in at number 2, Madonna and Prince wanted to make a musical together. In a 1989 interview with Madonna, she was asked who her musical aspirations are, and she named Prince as a vocalist that she admired. She then discussed her collaboration called Love Song. Quote, "We've been friends for years and admire each other's work, so we'd always talked about getting together to write. And in fact, there was a moment last year where we were possibly going to write a musical together. I went to a studio in Minnesota and worked on some stuff just to get a feel of what it would be like to collaborate." She then stated that her and Prince had a lot of difficulty creating a completed track. After she worked with him consistently for a few days, she left the studio. She no longer had any interest in writing a musical with him. Then, a while later, Prince approached Madonna with a demo that she enjoyed, but they ended up having to write the full track together long distance because Prince lived in Minneapolis and Madonna hated Minneapolis. The track, Love Song, did not chart the Billboard Hot 100. And finally at number 1, Madonna regrets posing naked for her book. While this article was posted quite a few years ago when Madonna was 49 years old, and she's 63 now, Madonna has stated that she seriously regrets posing naked so often in her youth. In her 1992 book, Sex, she believes that the reception of it was less about the beauty of the female form and expressing sexuality, and more so about how people branded her as an exhibitionist. She admitted that, at one point, she was much less adventurous, branding herself as prude. Quote, "I really was not getting up to much. I don't think I was as naughty as I could have been. I was quite straight. I was a geek when I was young. I did not really do much that was interesting." I think from what I got from this interview, it was less about the actual posing naked that she regrets, but more so about the public's reception about the book. It branded her as loose rather than expressing beauty through art.